K-State student athletes are saying that they'll hold back from games if action isn't taken against one student who mocked the death of George Floyd on Twitter. KSNT Sully Ingalls talked to a local law professor about what consequences could look like from his tweets. Sully?
While legally this tweet isn't hate speech, K-State's administration is doing what they can to support their student athletes. But the options are limited. In 1969, the U.S. Supreme Court made a landmark decision in Brandenburg versus Ohio, essentially saying the government can't punish inflammatory speech unless it's producing imminent danger. That applies to the tweet seen by thousands last week, but the school can make a difference going forward.
It goes without saying, but I guess it should be said, that the tweets that we're talking about are deeply offensive and reprehensible. But freedom of speech is an important right, and so it is difficult to know precisely how to deal with this.
While coaches, athletes, and the university can verbally take a stand, legally things are more complex, and the damage has been done.
It's not possible, really, for K-State to develop new policies that would apply retroactively. But of course, as I understand it, part of the demands are from the athletes that K-State develop policies to govern this kind of conduct going forward. And of course, I think that public institutions do need to explore those options.
As a public school, the options can be limited.
In contrast to other countries like Canada, many of the countries of Western Europe that do limit hate speech, the United States has protected hate speech. And so that leaves public institutions like K-State, which is a public university, in a bit of a bind.
That tough situation stretches much farther than the university, and in the eyes of this professor, it may be time for a change.
And we're in a moment in the United States where we're starting to grapple with this legacy of racism and systemic and structural racism that has included a condoning of a problem of hate speech. And so it may be that the time is right for us to rethink how you strike that balance between the rights of freedom of speech on the one hand and the rights of victims of hate speech on the other.
Hate speech may be protected, but it has its consequences.
While we tend to protect it in the name of freedom of speech, hate speech is itself undermining the value of freedom of speech. So these are really big issues that we need to be talking about in the context of this moment where we're trying to grapple with all of the aspects of systemic and structural racism in this country.
Now, social media companies' decisions on hate speech is an entirely new issue itself, but in this case, Twitter did make the student delete the tweet for what they called glorifying violence. From the studio, Sully Ingalls, KSNT News.